بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد النبي الخاتم وعلى إخوانه من الأنبياء والمرسلين. سعادة السفير صديق سان براون باك، سفير الحريات الدينية الأسبق بوزارة الخارجية. سعادة رئيس الجلسة صديق القس بوب براوبر. سعادة السفير ديفيد سيبرسون. فضيلة الإمام محمد ماجد، أوطة بطريق القدس المحترم. أصحاب المعالي، أصحاب السعادة، اسمحوا لي إذا كنت لم أذكر شخصا باسمه فإنكم جميعا في القلب وقريبا من اللسان. أيها الحضور الكريم، اسمحوا لي أن أتوجه بجزيل الشكر للقائمين على هذا المؤتمر الدولي على الدعوة لهذا اللقاء الهام، والتي تأتي دورته لهذا العام برعاية منظمة حزب الفضول الجديد. إن هذه اللقاءات والمبادرات جديد بأن تحقق لنا بعض ما نصبو إليه. أترك للشيخ حمزة يقرأ عليكم.
So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, the Shaykh began by praising God and all of the prophets and our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and then acknowledged His Excellency, the former Ambassador Sam Brownback for religious freedom, His Excellency Ambassador David Saperstein, His Excellency Imam Muhammad Majid, His Excellency Pastor Bob Roberts, and then His Beatitude Theophilus III, Eastern Orthodox Patriarch of Jerusalem. And then he apologized for any name he might have omitted, but he said all of you are in his heart. Peace and mercy and blessings of God be upon all of you. Allow me to express my sincere thanks to the organizers of this conference for convening this important meeting, which is sponsored this year by the New Alliance of Virtue among the sponsors. These meetings and initiatives are well placed to realize the coalition, human fraternity, tolerance, and peace that we all seek, especially with the presence of personalities such as my friend, His Excellency Ambassador Brownback, with his wisdom, experience, and openness. In this context, we also commend the efforts of the predecessor, Ambassador David Saperstein, and his successor, the current Ambassador Rashad Hussain, who are likewise highly capable and commendable leaders. Mr. Chairman, colleagues, distinguished audience, the title of this session of my speech is Religious Freedom for the Good of All. This may stem from either the assumption that the availability of religious freedoms is in the interest of all, a hypothesis that needs to be tested and proved, and that the title is a call to make religious freedoms legitimately for the benefit of all. And this requires a mechanism as well as a theoretical and practical framework. So I'll address this topic by answering the following questions. The first, why do we believe that protecting religious freedom is in everyone's interests? What are the challenges to religious freedom, and how can we push for religious freedom in the world? By answering and discussing these questions, our conference can contribute to a shared vision for advancing religious freedom worldwide. First, why do we believe that protecting religious freedom is in everyone's interest? All religions are at risk in various parts of the world, and it is therefore in their interest to join hands and defend one another. Religious freedoms of a particular religion should enjoy the support of other religions, as each one constitutes a majority in a certain part of the world, whilst it constitutes a minority in others. If it does not cooperate with other religions in its regions of influence, it may not cooperate in turn in areas where it forms a numerical minority. Thus, religious leaders must cooperate to ensure religious freedom for all. Globalization, which has seen the movement of goods and merchandise around the world, has witnessed a similar migration in ideas and peoples of different religions and beliefs. And thus there is hardly a land that belongs exclusively to one religion in the world today. Nonetheless, the purpose of protecting religious freedom should not be based on a pragmatic calculation. It should stem first and foremost from a religious belief or principle, since all religions teach and in fact urge support for the oppressed and the protection of freedom of faith and practice. It is in fact one of the rights that Islam grants human beings. The Holy Quran states, there is no compulsion in the religion in 2:256. Also, the provision of religious freedom is not merely important, but necessary to ensure coexistence and peace among human beings on earth. For there is no peace in the world without peace between religions, as the Swiss philosopher Hans Kuhn put it. Guaranteeing religious freedoms, therefore, contributes to understanding the joyful coexistence amongst all human beings. What are the challenges that hinder the availability of religious freedoms? The challenges facing religious freedom stem mostly from policies that regulate societies. These may be policies that are hostile to all religions equally, whether through an ideological basis, or they may be discriminatory policies based on historical accretions and cultural memory. Factors such as poor communication, ignorance of the other who follows a different religion, fear and apprehension of religion generally, and the inappropriate practices of some religious leaders due to selfish competition or bigotry likewise intensifies these challenges. Therefore, we can only deal with the obstacles to religious freedom effectively if we understand the factors affecting these policies, and we must deal with them rationally and conscientiously. Whilst we support and advocate for religious freedom, we believe that if it is founded on the solid ground of peace and within its context, it will be truly secure and sustainable. The freedom we call for is unconditional to the extent that it guarantees the observance of public order, social tranquility, and peace in every country. Finally, how do we push for religious freedom in the world? This requires continuous effort and broad-ranging cooperation between religious leaders of different faiths through increasing mutual acquaintance between their followers and enhancing cooperation and joint initiatives between them. Likewise, dialogue and open channels of communication with policymakers are needed to raise awareness of the importance and value of religious freedom. The followers of each religion must also turn to their sacred texts to highlight teachings that encourage coexistence and tolerance, and to see their religious texts, history, and heritage in new and open interpretive contexts that allow them to discover the foundations for coexistence therein. In this regard, they must draw attention to the inspirational stories and models from their history, whose recital may contribute to spreading the values of goodness and peace in the hearts of their adherents. In this context, I thank you for dedicating this session to discussing the contents of the historic 2016 Marrakesh Declaration promoting religious freedom in Muslim-majority lands, which was jointly issued by the Abu Dhabi Forum for Peace and the Ministry of Islamic Affairs in Morocco, and adopted by the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, the OIC. It is a model that should be emulated by other religious leaders who are called to launch further initiatives aimed at protecting minorities in areas where other religions are in the majority. Participants, the existential challenges faced by humankind increase the need to protect religious freedoms of followers of different faiths in many regions of the world. While we monitor from time to time threats to religion and religious sanctities in various regions, such as the burning of the Quran in Sweden and Denmark, we fear that these bigoted trends and extremist practices will overshadow the spirit of tolerance and joyful coexistence that we work and call for. Our country, the United Arab Emirates, represents a model where dozens of different religions, cultures, and races coexist. Hundreds of nationalities living in security, safety, and respect. The UAE hosted the signature of hundreds of religious leaders to the Charter of the New Alliance of Virtue. One of the most important initiatives that should be jointly pursued by religious leaders, the United Nations, and decision makers around the world are laws protecting places of worship from damage and desecration, because they are places where God is worshipped and His name is praised. The Quran said, if we did not repel some people by means of other people, many monasteries, churches, synagogues, and mosques wherein God's name is much invoked would have been destroyed. God is sure to help those who help God's cause. God is all-powerful and almighty. The issue of religious freedom is neither Eastern nor Western. It is not specific to rich countries nor democracies, all of which have had their share of successes and failures. Rather, discrepancy is in the pursuit of religious freedom in the most effective way possible. There is an urgent need to activate the Charter of the New Alliance of Virtue by religious leaders to support the oppressed. In conclusion, we hope that our joint efforts here will satisfy the need for understanding, dialogue, and the search for commonalities. May it serve as a general invitation to people of goodwill to unite to preserve the flame of hope for a better future for the great human family. Thank you.
أشكركم على صبركم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
Peace be upon all of you.
I'm a Baptist pastor from Texas, and I love Shaykh bin Bayyah.